Om Shanti. This workshop number 55 on cooperation.
Volume, can you reduce, brother? We are cutting off. Sorry.
Before we begin, let me wish you a happy new year to all of you. I hope I'm audible and clear.
Yes.
So as always, before we begin the workshop, let's spend a few minutes silent reflection. Maybe this New Year resolution could be related to cooperation. Ask yourself, am I cooperative at a subtle level?
We can stop the music now while speaking. Sorry.
We all do give cooperation physically. But let's, from today's workshop, explore whether I can give cooperation on a subtle level, which means trying to give feelings of good wishes and pure thoughts to someone who is struggling with something, or simply having feelings of love and compassion for someone in pain. So today's exercises on cooperation, let us try to explore this aspect in detail. So thank you so much for all of your participation, as always. And with this, I'll stop sharing my screen. And thank you so much, Anu sister, as well, and all the translators for your continuous, unwavering contribution to the workshops. So with this, I would now request Anu sister to move on to the first exercise. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Manoj. And yes, thank you everyone for being here with us in this journey together. It's wonderful with the journey with the value. And today is cooperation, such a beautiful value to start with the new year. And yeah, thank you for joining in, even from West Coast so early. And definitely, Manoj brother, it's Happy New Year. So let's wish everyone Happy New Year. May this year brings a lot of dreams come true for everyone. So yes, let's start our journey on cooperation. And for that, we'll start as we always start with the just give me 1 second, with the icebreaker. And that is always a video to reflect on that particular value in that video. So let's watch the video and then let's share that what is the insight you get from that video.
It's smarter to travel in groups.
So that was the beautiful video. So what are the thoughts that you all want to share? You can unmute and speak. Maybe we'll take a few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, or put in the chat.
Together we can overcome a lot of the obstacles.
Yes, that's powerful, right? Together is the power. Thank you, sister. Anna says, funny. Harpreet says, Happy New Year. Yes. So what is the insight from the video that came to your mind just in one word? What is that?
Togetherness brings the stress, sister.
Together?
Ness brings the strength to deal with anything.
Right. Power, strength. Right. Anyone else? Manuel brother says, cooperation in difficult and aggressive situations can easily bring peace when we are together. Yes. Balvinder sister says, unity is strength to overcome any danger. Yes, Dr. Mehta.
United we stand, divided we fall.
Yes, united we stand, divided we fall. And Dr. Manoj also puts that on the chat. So we all know the power of cooperation. Any other thought anyone would like to share? I'm sure it's beautiful celebration day for India, for Europe, and you are here with us in the session. For our part of the world, I'm sure it's everybody's awakened. Solidarity build strength. Yeah, it was quite straightforward, isn't it? So travel together, or in other words, it's we can really conquer anything if we're together. Divided, we'll lose our power. Yes, Balvinder, you want to share quickly? Thank you.
Yes, Om Shanti and good morning, everyone, Divine Family. I wish in this new year, if we all can learn a beautiful lesson of cooperation from nature, from birds, from animals, if we as a human being can learn. So this is the wish for all of us for this new year. Thank you.
Yeah, so it was quite obvious, easy. And so let's continue our journey as we'll go deeper into churning or reflecting on this value of cooperation in our lives. So Deepak is, sorry, give me 1 sec. So thank you so much, yes, Deepak Bhai, for helping it out. So yeah, this is the turning points. I mean, the sharings that people shared. So we know mostly the unity is the strength. Okay, so thank you so much. Let's move forward to the next exercise. And that would be the qualities of cooperation. So what are the qualities? And for that, the reflection question that we'll reflect on is reflect on an instance from your life where cooperation led to a successful outcome, and jot down qualities needed for cooperation. So reflect on that situation where the cooperation, you have that experience that brought a successful outcome. So let's take about 1 minute for this time, and then we'll share. Thank you.
So sorry to interrupt, Sister Anu. Olga's sister is there if you want to make her co-host and create a room. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll do it. Thanks. I hope you all got to remember one of the instance and the cooperation and the success that is connected with each other. So we can share from you. Stop. So can we hear from you? Anyone who would like to unmute and speak? As Xiaomi says, appreciation of others. But yeah, if there was any instance where you saw that cooperation playing out and that brought that positive outcome. So maybe you can start with Dr. Mehta, if you'd like to share.
Well, I think to a certain, every operation is you need a cooperation of the whole team, beginning with the anesthesiologists, the assistants, the nurse, almost the entire team, even those who adjust your lights, those who help you with instruments. So I think we all accept that without cooperation, we cannot function for every patient. And for us, cooperation is the fundamental of a good teamwork. And I have a feeling that we must have respect for all the team members. Even the smallest team member is equally important. You make an operation and you leave, and afterwards it's a young resident doctor or intensivist who looks after your patient. And therefore you have to depend on each one of them. A nursing care, whoever takes, even a orderly in the ward, you need his help for lifting the patient or helping with all his natural, passing urine, things like that. So I think cooperation is the fundamental in our life. Without cooperation, we cannot move.
Beautiful. Yeah, cooperation is fundamental to our existence, to the teamwork, and we can't exist alone. And I loved it that we have to have that recognition, understanding, and respect for every little contribution makes that the outcome, the success. Thank you so much for really beautifully explaining that. And I think it's quite clear that how a teamwork through cooperation works. Thank you, Dr. Mehta. Anyone else would like to share?
Om Shanti, Didi ji.
Om Shanti. Vijay Bhaiji. You can share. What's your thought?
My dear brothers and sisters, today is a great day, a new year. So please accept my best wishes for ever healthy, ever wealthy, ever happy. Now, cooperation is most important is that we should have our cooperation inside our thoughts, our speech, and our action. If they are cooperative in a sense of positivity with a great power taking from the Supreme, then our vibrations will make everybody cooperative very easily. Teamwork, as you know, T means together, E means each, A means achieves, M means more. T means everybody achieves more. So cooperation, teamwork is a necessity, is a must for our life, and we get at every step, starting from the morning when we get up till we sleep. And even in the sleep also there is a cooperation from God of good consciousness during the sleep. So cooperation is a fundamental way of life living with happiness. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much. Yes, cooperation. Every moment of life is cooperation. And you said it very beautifully that it has to be from our hearts, from the thoughts. Again, like Dr. Mehta said, with respect for others, cooperation gets life. Thank you so much. Brother Manuel says qualities, the qualities. Yes, we can share the qualities that can bring cooperation. That is love for self and others, and self-sovereignty. Self-sovereignty means being aware about the self, not forgetting, not flowing with the situation, and staying with the self, self-sovereign, peaceful, helpful. Thank you so much, Brother Manuel. Anyone else would like to share their beautiful memory? Maybe you got an instance, maybe some qualities that you think that is vital for cooperation. Okay. Quite silent today. Every moment life cooperates with us, right? Every moment we can't exist without cooperation. Yes, Valvinder, sister, you have to say something.
Yes, again, quickly. I planned a Christmas dinner or Happy New Year dinner for almost 30 family members. And in my family, each member took responsibility. Who's going to do cleanup? Who's going to do for shopping? Who's going to do cooking? And who's going to serve? So it was, end result was fantastic. Everybody was happy. Food was delicious. And qualities, love, empathy, patience, understanding, and happiness. Everybody was happy.
Beautiful. Really beautiful sharing. Yeah. So together, coming together and dividing the roles, and then love and understanding, happiness. Deepak brother says teamwork in projects, entire team accountable as unit. Right. Accountable and appreciated, like Dr. Mehta said. I think if a little thing is also not done, it won't work. So the light is not enough in the operation that Dr. Mehta was sharing, then it won't work. The light which showing also is important. So Harpreet sister says encouragement, love, consistency, appreciation, and togetherness. These are the qualities for cooperation. We can take one or two more sharings if one is inspired to share their story. Yes, Brijpal Bhai.
Service is cooperation. Love is cooperation. Giving is cooperation. No expectations. Acceptance is cooperation. Living in soul consciousness is cooperation. Forgetting is cooperation. Forgiving is cooperation. Connection with God, silence, humility, transfer, attachment from man material, mammoth value is cooperation. Giving respectful regards is cooperation.
That's really beautiful. Thank you, brother. It's a bit of that spiritual aspect came. So forgetting is cooperation. Forgiving is cooperation. Living in soul consciousness is cooperation. And because that is what brings us that respect for others at every moment, no matter how others are. Thank you so much, Rishpal Bhai.
Thank you.
Somebody else want to share? One more sharing? If not, it's okay. We can wrap up. So Deepak Bhai, you can. Deepak Bhai, thank you so much for taking the time to write down. So beautiful qualities for cooperation. See, all of our sharing brought out. So appreciation of others. Then allegiance, courage, strength, cooperation of entire team while performing medical operations. So from nursing to anesthesia to helpers, respect for all the team members, that is respect is a quality, love for the self and others and self-sovereignty, teamwork, together each achieves, cooperation is way of life, of togetherness. Entire team is accountable for the success. Every single contribution counts. And coming together, understanding each other, respecting each other, and that's how experiencing that happiness together. Encouragement, love, consistency, appreciation, and togetherness. That's the qualities for cooperation, love and giving without expectation. Living in soul consciousness, regard, respect, forgiving, forgetting is cooperation. It's beautiful. So thank you so much, Deepak Bhai. And yeah, beautiful churnings. I'm sure we are taking this for ourselves to reflect in us the qualities and that make the life beautiful with the value of cooperation. So let's move deeper more as I hand it over to Brother. Thank you, Brother.
Okay, so thank you so much, all of you. And I must acknowledge here the cooperation of all the people who are sort of responsible for making these things happen. We have been doing this since almost 2 years and 3 months now. So it's not a one-man show, as all of you know, it's a cooperation of all the translators as well. And I would like to acknowledge one more translator today, actually, Sister Marina, who will be, I think, translating in the last hour. It's a new thing for her. So the French, please bear with her that she'll be starting when Brother Neville starts speaking. So let me just share the screen and let's go into the meditation mode before we go into action planning as always. So I won't be playing any music because I think it's not compatible. My voice keeps cutting off. So I hope now it's clear and audible. So let's sit back. Take a few deep breaths in and out. And relax your mind. You can see many things on the screen in front of you. I would request you not to read those, but just realize yourself to be this conscient being of energy, coming in interaction with others. Every now and then, personal level and professional level both. See yourself as this energy first at home. As you wake up in the morning, doing your daily chores, as always, you're cooperating with everyone, including the nature outside, the family members at home, Also cooperation with the 5 elements the body is made of. Your body, the breath, so on and so forth. And see how beautifully the body works. Everyone in harmony and cooperation with each other. As you get ready for work, let's see compassion, cooperation now at workplace. As Dr. Mehta and many others have shared, at workplace, I can't be in isolation. It's a collective effort of all the people involved, cooperation of each and every one, which makes the task a success. So at workplace, let me have this respect for everyone around. As a doctor, even I need utmost respect for my patient. Who's placed his full faith in me and allows me to do everything. The entire hospital staff, including the cleaners, the administrative staff, my colleagues, the nursing staff, each and every one. And let me have this sense of immense gratitude for each one of them involved. And as I wind up to go back home in the evening, let me thank the Almighty, the Supreme Being, for being constantly my companion throughout the day and helping me to cooperate with each other. And again, as I return back home, let me pass these vibrations of cooperation again to all the family members. And as I slip into the bed to sleep, let me spend a few minutes in silence, thanking all the people for the cooperation throughout the entire day, along with the Supreme Almighty Authority. So with this beautiful visualization of cooperation at home and workplace, let's move on to our action planning. And we call it cooperation in action. So being inspired by the small visualization which we did of a few minutes, what changes do I need to inculcate in myself to demonstrate fruitful cooperation in action? So I would request all of you all to reflect on these, the changes which you need to inculcate in yourself. We'll spend a few minutes reflecting on this, and then we'll come in the sharing mode. Okay, so welcome back. I'm sure you have reflected quite a bit. So people who want to please share can raise your hands and unmute. Okay, so I would request new people to share as well. So Brijpal Bhai says, accept what is acceptable, but don't reject what is not acceptable. Wonderful. And if you can't make, at least don't break. Yeah. Because there's a popular saying, either make or break, but not in cooperation. Yeah, we should always strive for making. Yes, anyone inspired to share can please unmute. Yes, Vidhi sister, yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
You should be more humble and easy to mold while cooperation.
Great. Yeah, you can complete you are saying something.
Yeah, this is what, like, you have to be humble and easy to mold and not, not be rigid in teamwork, or while cooperation, you cannot be rigid. It has to be easy.
It's perfect. So the ability to mold, which is resonating this value of, also we call it flexibility. Sister Anna is mentioning from Portugal that you should have flexibility. Yes, obviously we can't, when we are in a group, we can't expect to be done all the time what we feel. So thank you for that. Yeah. Vijay Bhai, go ahead. I can't not take your sharing it. Go ahead.
Om Shanti Bhai ji. That we are not able to hear, echo is coming, I think.
We are able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. There's a little bit of poor connection, I think, but we can hear you.
I think it's not clear. I'm feeling a lot of echo is coming back.
Okay, so in the meantime, I'll take some other sharings. You can write it down in the chat box, Vijay Bhai. Sister Rehna is mentioning cooperation comes naturally when we have mastered all the 7 powers out of the 8 main powers. So that's what we need to work on. So she's mentioned about the powers which are taught in Raj Yoga. So thank you, sister. Deepak Bhai says, being cooperative by being a good listener. Yeah. So as you can see, whatever we discussed in the qualities are the things which we have to get in our changes. we need to inculcate those changes. So again, they're all full value based. So being a good listener and being punctual and respecting time of everyone. Yes, because we are working in groups, we need to really respect each other's time. Yeah, excellent. Sister Harpreet says, I have to be more patient and being in the present, yes, mindfulness, and have a clear purpose, right? And I think you also mentioned before about encouragement, love, consistency. That was for the first exercise, yeah. So Dr. Mehta wanted to share, or someone else? Yeah. Go ahead, yeah. You have to unmute, Dr. Mehta. Yeah, yeah.
We live in an interconnected world, and we have to depend on everyone, and we have to contribute to our whatever the qualities that we have, so that others benefit from our work as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So Sister Rena, you want to elaborate on the powers which you have mentioned, or so that people know what you are speaking about, the ones who are new to Raj Yoga? Okay.
Okay. So
yeah,
we have these 8 powers. Just power to withdraw, power to pack up, power to tolerate, power to accommodate, power to discriminate and judge, and power to face. These are the 7 powers. So when you have mastered it, then this power to cooperate, comes naturally, because, I don't have to make an effort to accept somebody or accommodate somebody. That is already mastered. So that is my, understanding of power of cooperation.
Sure.
See, it's like there's a situation where somebody is trying to challenge you. Okay, by any means, it can be anything. So if you have all this power handy, okay, you master it, so you don't have to, make an effort to, think, okay, this person is a soul. Okay, you have the powers yourself. So you can, just focus on yourself. Okay, I'm powerful. So it doesn't matter what the other person is doing. I'm good by myself. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. So I think Vijay Bhai and Balvinder's sister can share. I'll just read this one quick from Eleanor. She's renamed her. Thank you, Sister Eleanor. She's saying to be able to cooperate with others needs to, for that we need to feel others' honesty in their purpose. Yeah, quite deep. So we need to know what is their purpose and what honesty is there in their purpose. Yeah, so Geeta, Dr. Geeta wants to share. Go ahead, followed by Vijay Bhai. Yeah.
I think Vijay Bhai can go ahead.
Okay, no worries. So you all can give your chances to each other. Vijay Bhai, go ahead.
Om Shanti Bhai ji, I have written a chat as to cooperate with you because you wanted me to write on a chat. So I would suggest you can read my chats, brother.
Sure.
Om
okay.
Shanti.
So brother is saying, Vijay Bhai, that we should always have feelings of gratitude for obtaining cooperation of all. And when he says Brahmin family, it basically, for people who are new to this word Brahmin family, it's all about the spiritual family. We call ourselves Brahmins. So he's saying that we need to keep a balance. And this is one of the teachings which we are taught here, Balik so Malak and Malik so Balak, which means in a meeting, when you are there, if someone is asking you for some advice, you please give the advice as a master because someone is asking for that. But when in the meeting, if a consensus is reached and your advice is not taken into consideration, then please accept. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. So be a child and accept that. So that's what he's trying to say, that be in the group dynamic. I mean, sort of be with the group dynamics and don't be rigid. I think, again, the rigidity comes here, being flexible and moldable. Give pure thoughts and advice to the gathering. And if final decision is different from your advice, accept it, right? Because as we always think, unity is strength. United we stand, divided we fall. Okay, so Geeta sister, you want to share? Or I think it was Balvinder's sister who was waiting to share.
Yeah, I
Geeta
can do
sister,
some sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing, what I have learned is that Cooperation needs a deep understanding. Understanding of the self, understanding the situation, and understanding the role of your role in your situation and role of others in the situation. That's how you can do maximum cooperation. Sometimes you just have to stand apart from the scene. That is cooperation also. You don't need to interfere in the scene, in the drama that is going on. I wonder if I have made myself clear.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, you made yourself clear. So sometimes in challenging situations, it is good to be not in action. It is good to just be a detached observer and observe, because my input may sometimes make things worse. So it is best to be silent, observe as a detached. So that is also giving cooperation to the situation. Fantastic. Balwinder, sister, you can share. That will be the last sharing, if you want to share.
Yeah, in this year, I will stay extra alert, aware, careful. When my mind is different, my words are different, they don't cooperate, and there's no harmony in me. So that's my number one action. Second one, in family member, there are some members who are not cooperative. So I will continue cooperating with those members unconditionally and always. And also, I will be more loving and caring because I know now I'm soul conscious. So I'm not acting or feeling from body consciousness. So these are two my actions. Thank you.
Right. So thank you so much. And Prajakta, you can go ahead and we'll take your last sharing because you seem to share something. You want to share something. Go ahead. Yeah.
Om Shanti to everyone. I have similar things to share because I also work in a hospital industry. I think very important in teamwork, cooperation. I mean, nothing will be possible unless you cooperate. So first thing is acceptance of your team members. Whatever they are, you may agree, you disagree with them. So acceptance is very important. And secondly, what what others have done, their sharing is about being grounded to our own values. We have to keep respect. Sometimes, you in the group dynamics, people may not respect your own opinion, but we have to be very much grounded to our own values. That also helps you to cooperate in any challenging situation. And very important is you have to improvise your ways instead of having others, have their own opinions. You have to improvise so that you cooperate within a group and the team works well together. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thanks so much. So if Deepak Bhai can just share the screen to see what sharings have come. And in the meantime, let me announce if there are new participants, you all can please share your contacts, your WhatsApp numbers and emails with us, either to everyone or to Sister Vidhi. So, okay, I'll just not read everything because we don't have time, but flexibility and being able to mold oneself and being humble is a very important change which I need to get. Don't reject people, what they're saying, accept. Everyone is saying that. Being more patient and trying to understand. I like this very much. Trying to understand honestly what people's opinion is about. And as Brother Vijay mentioned about accepting the advice like Balak so Malik. Sister Reina mentioned about using all the spiritual powers which are mentioned here. And obviously I should have feelings of gratitude. If I can request all of you all to mute yourself. Sister Geeta, you can just mute. We need to keep a balance, which was also covered in Balak so Malik very well. And being aware and alert. And always, I think we always apply this for love, unconditional love, but also we should apply this for unconditional cooperating. Unconditional is adjective should be applied for cooperation as well. Despite what people are doing, whether they are cooperative or not, let me just unconditionally cooperate with them. So thank you so much, Deepak Bhai. And we also have Brother Neville with us already. So I will be sort of introducing him later. I'm a bit late in sharing, but I'll start sharing the screen and take you on to what we heard, from Sister Judy Rogers last weekend. it was all, again, you'll have covered quite a few things. The first one, which she said that cooperation is a universal law. Like all the organs in the body, the lungs, for example, they take in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. So this is a natural harmony, and it's a universal law. Everything in the body, when we start eating anything, our digestive tract starts assimilating, absorbing right from the oral cavity till down. So everything in the universe is made to cooperate with each other. Same thing can be seen even in nature, the animals, the forests, everything. And cooperation actually teaches us about two beautiful values she covered in detail, love and respect, which I think we have alluded to quite a few times in our sharings. And for that, I think all of us need to work on our inner state of awareness. If I'm receiving cooperation from someone for some task, I need to be aware of that. And I need to really be aware that, yes, this person is helping me maybe out of the way. So the state of awareness is the seed. And I'm sure Brother Neville will cover this in detail. Like, because at Brahma Kumaris, here, the Raj Yoga meditation, which we are taught, is again and again taking yourself into this awareness that who you originally are. And once you are there, cooperation flows out naturally. And the most important hindrance or barrier, which doesn't allow me to make love and cooperation flow in my natural state, is ego. I mean, it's basically, all of us know that. If I'm egoistic, I may really not cooperate with someone despite me being able to do things for them. So absence of love creates something which is called an attitude of brokenness. And if a soul breaks, as we had covered, like in the outside world, we say either make or break. But remember, in cooperation, it's always make. Even for a person who's on the brink of breaking, please make things for him, because he needs that at that point of time, he or she. And Sister Judy mentioned that unlimited love is the natural remedy to heal. Because without love, even cooperation won't come in, and even healing is not possible. And it reminds me of the slogan here at Brahma Kumaris. One of the first administrative heads, whom we lovingly used to call Mama. Mama means mother. So she used to say in Hindi, Snehi Bhava, Sahyogi Bhava. So Snehi means love and Sahyogi means to cooperate. So she meant to say that you can only cooperate with someone whom you love. And this love is something unconditional coming from inside. And that's what Sister Judy covered, that love is on 3 levels: love for the self, love for others, and love for the Creator God. So love for the self, many people really don't understand, how do I love myself? So it's basically trying to respect yourself. And when we say self, we have to realize the inner being whom we are, not this big body which is seen in front of the mirror. And once I start loving myself, naturally I will be able to love someone else in front of me. So that's important to understand. Second aspect, loving others, even those who have done wrong to me, maybe in the past or at the moment doing as well. Let me just radiate love. Is it easier to do or not? We have to decide. But once we start practicing meditation, the more and more we connect ourselves with our inner core and with the Supreme, things become easier. And most important is, as in the meditation or a visualization which I covered, we really tend to forget the Supreme Being. But I think loving Him, the Supreme Being, whom we call God Father, is opening up a channel, a big channel through which love and cooperation will really start flowing through me. And then I really don't need to worry about me getting empty, because I'm connected to the source and I'm filling myself constantly. A very important quality she touched upon is humility, which is needed for spiritual cooperation. And I think the opposite of ego is humility. We have covered humility. Jayanti Didi had covered at length this value. So I think humility is one of the important values which we need to practice for cooperation. And also, once I have done with the task, I have cooperated, the task is done, the feeling of that instrument consciousness, that it is not I who had done, it was God, the Supreme Being, who had got it done through me. So that consciousness of being an instrument will also help us a long way to have unconditional spiritual cooperation. So I think because I had covered this in the Q&A with her in the last question, so this is what, in short, Judy, sister, had to say, that love and cooperation are innate in the self. We don't really need to do something. But she said that it's a universal law and it is present inside of all the creation, even animals for that matter. That's our natural state of being, love and cooperation. I'll take a few questions. We have almost 7 more minutes because the questions were quite interesting. That I cooperate with everyone at work, but never get anything in return. So how to deal with this? Quite a common scenario nowadays seen in the world. So she said, never expect anything in return, just keep giving. Again, I must say easier said than done, but the more you practice getting connected to the inner being and to the Supreme Being, it naturally flows. And she said that give it, because all of us can agree on this, that whenever we give something or receive something, either of these two, what is the one which gives us joy? Something which is giving. So keep giving more and more, and don't feel empty when you're giving, because you're filling yourself from the source. And I asked about a quote from Nelson Mandela, who had mentioned that if you want the cooperation of all humans around you, you must make them feel very important by being genuine and humble. So again, genuinity and humility do come here. And she elaborated more on this, that Nelson Mandela, all of us know that he was a fantastic, great human being. He showed deep natural respect for everyone. And he really won over people's hearts because of these two things, genuinity and humility. Quite a twisted question, I must say, that because Sister Judy mentioned that ego interrupts in your cooperation, right? But the question was, my boss is full of ego, but he also at the same time cooperates with me. So can we say that ego interrupts cooperation? So again, Sister Judy mentioned that it's a big spectrum. And in the ego spectrum, maybe the boss, he's a person who's full of himself and wants this self-importance. But on the other hand, since you are his subordinate, I mean, he'll obviously cooperate with you. So people can be egoistic, but they can also have a good heart. But we need to remember that on a spiritual path, ego doesn't go hand in hand with a good heart. If I have a good heart, I am generous, I need to shed my ego. Because ego is a big killer of everything. I mean, I must say all values which we are discussing on our platform, in the workshops or in the talks, ego just crumbles up everything. I mean, it just destroys that value. The next question was, in service, I have to keep asking people for help. So how can I do this without feeling heavy about going around asking help? So again, she said that when you're asking for help, don't feel heavy, because if you're an instrument, that myness and I-ness will go off. I'm not doing it. It's not my task. It's the task of the divine being. But make sure that you're constantly filling yourself up by regular meditation. And if you're filling yourself up, there is no scope of getting heavy at all. It's only when I feel empty inside that I feel heavy. So it's important to realize that. And also, it's important not to take sorrow from people. It reminds me here of Dari Janki, who keeps saying that we really don't give sorrow to people nowadays, but for some reason or the other, we invariably take sorrow from them, which is really not good, because it makes my state of mind in upheaval. So we shouldn't be doing that. And I think I'll take the last 2 questions as well. Yes, this was about, I think, a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. Very common situation in India, that how do we deal with comparison and criticism This is a home situation between the two daughter and mother-in-law. But at work as well, people don't really appreciate you, but they may constantly criticize you, though you are being cooperative with them. So I think she said that most important thing is you cannot change anyone. The only one you can change is yourself, and with spiritual power. So it all again boils down to empowering the self by connection with the divine. Develop so much of love in your heart that it doesn't affect you, that someone's behaviors, someone's erratic responses don't affect you anymore. And again, the principle of not causing sorrow to self. Do not carry the sorrow, because they are doing what they are doing from their point of view. They are really not wanting to give you sorrow, but I think you are taking sorrow if you are really getting affected by them. And I think the last question, which was quite practical, I'll just take this, that instrument consciousness, which I had covered, that how do I develop this consciousness? So again, the more and more you get connected, you're spiritually aware of your inner core, the who you are, then you start becoming aware that it is not your work. You're doing some service, but there is a greater spiritual energy at work, which means whatever you're doing, you're being inspired by someone to do, and that someone is the divine being. And the more and more we are in regular connection with the divine being, the supreme source, we really develop these two powers, which we are constantly taught here, apart from that, what Sister Rehna mentioned, the catching power and touching power. Like I start getting touchings from the divine being, and also I get the catching power to sort of feel those touchings. So that's what, and once I know that I am not doing anything, it's his job, the divine's job, automatically instrument consciousness flows in. So with this, I'll just stop here. Sorry, I'm going further. Yeah, so I would now want to request Sister Anu to please highlight Brother Neville. And thank you so much, Brother Neville, for joining. And Brother Neville Hodgkinson has joined for the first time. And before I pass it on to him, it's my duty to introduce him. He's a very senior member of the Brahma Kumaris from the UK. And he's an author and journalist as well. And he specializes in writing about health and medicine. And he's returned back to medical journalism in the recent months with a series of articles, which I must say are about challenging orthodox approaches to COVID. And I'm sure all of you know about COVID, or have lived with COVID, got infected with that, got vaccinated as well. So his few books include I Know How to Live and I Know How to Die, the teachings of Dadi Janki, and also The Will to Be Well, the real alternative medicine. And he has been actually practicing Raj Yoga since 40 years. He's instrumental for providing the services at the Brahma Kumaris Global Retreat Center in Oxford. And as always, before I pass it on to him, a few lines in the form of a poem. So we have with us today Brother Neville Hodgkinson, who's the Supreme's choicest and dearest son, SON, filling himself daily with the knowledge from the Divine Son, SUN. He teaches us that remember none, but only one. Lead your life in remembrance like that of a nun, so that on this spiritual path, we can all have a healthy run. And a few lines on today's value of cooperation. He shall share his wisdom on how to cooperate, help each other on this difficult trail to recuperate. Though we may have opinions that are disparate, but let's learn from each other the art to tolerate. Because indeed we all belong to one and are not separate at all. Live life in harmony thereby, learning to conglomerate. Let feelings of grief and despair get a chance to evaporate and push the mighty Ravan to his doomsday to incarcerate, because we all want Ravan to be incarcerated. So thank you so much, Brother Neville, for joining. The stage is all yours. So, and I would just give a few housekeeping. I think the French translation has started. So all of you can click on the interpretation icon and visit the room which you want to hear in the language. So thank you, Brother Neville. Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Manoj Bhai. And congratulations to you and all of those taking part in this workshop. So much wisdom has been shared. And I love this topic of cooperation. As a matter of fact, I feel as if cooperation is what makes life worthwhile. Without it, we could be brilliant in some particular area, but if there isn't that sense of contributing something to the wider whole, then no matter how great we might be, there'll still be a feeling of emptiness. Because as Judy Rogers had said, cooperation is a kind of universal law of nature. When I was reflecting on that and how beautiful and essential to life cooperation is, I was remembering a wonderful story that touched me very deeply. I heard it many years ago, and it was about a young man who had grown up with a very, very favored background. He had a lot of gifts, especially had the power of concentration, so that he was able to bring this power to bear on everything he did. He was a great sportsman. He was good academically. In his 20s, he had a string of achievements to his name already, but he was feeling life to be more and more empty. And, this was 200 or 300 years ago, and at a time when religious leaders in probably most parts of the world then were very well respected. And when he made his feelings known to his community, they said, you should go and see the sage, the abbot at the monastery over on the hill, because he's the only one who can help you with this kind of issue. And so he decided he would. And he described his problem to the head of the monastery, who listened carefully and said, yes. He said, I've got a solution, but it will require a certain level of commitment from you. There's an old monk here at the monastery who has spent far more of his life here than he should have done practicing the game of chess. He's a brilliant master at the game. And I think that to set you against him might actually be one part of the solution to your problem. So the young man thought, well, okay, yes, I'll agree to that. But the abbot went on to say that to really give the game a sense of purpose and depth of meaning, the winner would take all and the loser would have to sacrifice their life. And in those days when people had more of a sense of the continuity of consciousness, as I like to think of it, or soul consciousness, they were more ready to make sacrifices of that kind. So the young man agreed because he felt his life was so empty anyway. And the day came for this contest. And they battled for a few hours because actually they were really quite equal in their skill. But eventually, the monk, being older, eventually made a mistake, and the young man spotted it immediately. And as he leaned forward to make the winning move, he had his hands on the piece, but he looked up into the eyes of the old monk, and he saw the old monk looking so sad that he had spent so much of his life as a monk in the monastery practicing chess moves, and yet here was this young fellow who was beating him at the game. And when the young man saw that and saw the sadness in the old monk's eyes, he felt that he couldn't actually make the winning move and take the old monk's life. And so instead, he did something else that would actually have meant that he would lose. And the abbot, who was sitting watching the entire game, when he saw this little episode, he swept all the pieces off the board so that there was neither a winner nor a loser ultimately. And he said, you've learned the lesson that you need in your life, which is to have a balance between concentration and compassion. And compassion is very much lies behind cooperation, genuine cooperation. It's like an energy that comes from deep within when it's genuine, not forced, like, you cooperate because you're told to do something and you'll be punished in return if you don't, but where it really comes from your heart, that you want the best, not just for yourself, but for others, and in fact, for all of human existence. And this is where one of your commentators very wisely spoke about how understanding is so needed for effective cooperation. But this was the first thought that came to me, that without cooperation, without that genuine cooperation, life gets very dry. If it's just a matter of, work and even, exercise and perhaps a little bit of play just to fill in the gaps, but basically you're just doing things like on a treadmill, then life has this feeling of emptiness. But that is something that affects many of us. And then I was thinking, well, there's so many beautiful things that can be said about cooperation. And I agreed with so much of what Judy shared about the necessity of it and the beauty of it. A question that was coming to my mind, and she did answer it as well, but it's something that each one of us has to answer in our own way, I think, was if the power isn't there to cooperate, then where does it come from? And sometimes we think we may be cooperating, but we might actually just be taking the easy route, just collaborating perhaps with something that does not have such a benign purpose, but we could fool ourselves that we're cooperating with it because that's the easiest way to go and least sacrifice from oneself involved in that. So that was one of the things that I thought it was interesting to think about as well. The other thing that came to mind, another story that came to mind also, especially when Manoj Bhai was speaking about Daddy Janki, and I knew Daddy very well because she was my kind of mentor and guide for some 40 years, as was mentioned. And she was a marvelous teacher. The reason that she commanded so much respect was that she didn't just say things like parrot fashion. She lived them. She really lived them. And this was as a result of some 80 years. I mean, she lived to 104, and she started on this spiritual journey at the age of 19. And even before then, we had stories from her of how even at the age of 3 or 4, she would be correcting people spiritually, like her telling her mother that she needed to be vegetarian, a few stories like this. So really basically a century of service on Daddy Janki's part. And one of the great secrets that allowed her to be as powerful as she was a huge amount of attention to her thoughts. She really would plug any leak in her happiness. It's not that she would not feel sorrow from time to time, but she wouldn't tolerate it. She would quickly look to see where it was coming from and think thoughts that would remove that feeling of lack or of sorrow, so that she kept the battery of her well-being constantly charged. And that's something that really is a big art. It sounds as if it would be a natural thing to do. We all want well-being, we all want happiness, but so often we find ourselves, don't we, turning things over in our mind. Sometimes people suffer hurts. Maybe they've originated in childhood and they don't really quite know where the feelings of negativity are coming from. But at other times, later in life, we just hold on to hurts that drain us of that inner power that allows us to really cooperate and be part of the river, the flow of life's purpose. The story that I was remembering from Daddy, which had a very powerful impact on me. I've told it a few times, and I think it really still speaks to me, because there are still things that gaps in my own, that vessel of my well-being that I have to plug from time to time. But this was an episode where she'd come to Oxford, where the retreat centre where I live is based, Oxford in England. And each year we used to have a programme at the town hall with her, and there would be maybe 250, 300 people would come along. Not like your big gatherings that tend to take place in India, but she was relatively unknown. And there was one occasion when I was like the MC of the main part of the evening. There was probably a dance and perhaps some meditation afterwards, but the main part of the evening was billed as a conversation between Daddy and a leading architect, a very well-known architect in this country. And I spoke to them both beforehand. I can't remember what the topic was, but the architect said he'd speak just for 2 minutes to put some ideas out, and then Daddy would respond to that, and there would hopefully be this conversation. In fact, it didn't work out like that. The architect spoke for 10 minutes, and I'm not sure if the translation was very good, because Daddy then started speaking and she wasn't really addressing what he had said. And she had gone on for about 20 minutes, and I saw half an hour of the 50 minutes of this conversation had gone. And so I tried to intervene to sort of nudge Daddy into an interaction. And I got the bony finger that was quite famous with a ek minute. And okay, so I waited a few minutes more and then tried again. And again, a similar response. And when I tried a third time, Daddy was quite offended. She sort of drew herself up and said how she hated it when she was a child and the British were in India and the way the British would talk down to the Indians. And I was really, really hurt, because I didn't feel I'd anything of that kind in me. I had so much respect for this person, but that memory was in her and this was what she came out with. So I kind of went into a sulk for the rest of the program, just let them get on with it. And people enjoyed, and to the extent that she shared a lot of wisdom, of course. But later, she went back to London, I went back to the retreat centre, and I tried to put this out of my mind because it really disturbed me, but I couldn't. And I dropped off to sleep eventually, and I woke up about 2 a.m. and it was running through my head. And so I thought, I'm going to have this out with Daddy. So I got in the car and drove down to London, about an hour that time of morning, and turned up around 4 o'clock for an early morning meditation that Daddy Janki was conducting at the Brahma Kumari's headquarters in London, Global Cooperation House. And I sat in the front, feeling quite cross, but Daddy looked very happy. She was up on the stage, sort of sharing drishti, conducting meditation with the gathering. And afterwards, I went up to her room before she would get there. And as she came back to her room, she was on her own. She spoke a little English. Well, she spoke quite a lot of English, actually. She understood quite a lot. And I said to her, Daddy, what you said last night was like a dagger in my heart. Now, normally in a circumstance like that, what would happen? You know, someone might say, what do you mean? Or don't be so silly. Or you misunderstood me, or whatever it might have been, which didn't say any of those things. There was no examination of my question, my statement. Just she put her hand on her own heart and gestured like this, pull it out, pull the dagger out. And the power with which she said this was such, you know, she said it with so much spiritual power, not as an excuse for not discussing, just because this was the right thing to do. There's no point in going back over an episode like that. Was it her fault? Was it my fault? No, none of that. Just pull it out and move on. And this is such a powerful lesson. I found it hugely valuable in subsequent years, because living in a community like the retreat center, where there's many of us from very, very different backgrounds, different races, different languages, different personalities, and cooperation is an absolute must. And so every now and then misunderstandings arise, hurts arise, but this lesson to minimize the impact of these hurtful episodes on oneself by removing them with that power, the power came from her in that case. It was so complete, like an order, that it happened easily. But for myself subsequently also, to greater and lesser extents, I'm learning and continuing to learn how not to let past hurts continue to deplete my spiritual strength, because it's only when I maintain that spiritual strength really well that I can truly cooperate. Otherwise, the ego, the self-defenses, the narrowness, the selfishness, all of those tendencies may from time to time recur. But if I can keep intact the self-respect, the true self-respect of my original nature, which is to be loving and cooperative, as those of you who've been following these talks will certainly be aware, then my life becomes much easier, and I'm able to be more giving and cooperative with others. And so that benefits others, and then others give me blessings, and you get a beneficial cycle rather than that negative cycle that hurt and anger and sorrow bring. So this is kind of immensely important in my own mind as the means to really maintain the power to make cooperation a reality, to make my contribution to cooperation a reality. I hope that those stories make some sense. I think just talking about these things is helpful, because we can highlight behaviors that promote ease of communication and good relationships. It's good to do that, but actually finding the power is really an important part of it at the same time, because otherwise, if you just talk about values of cooperation and compassion and all the rest of it, but you don't actually put in practice the discipline that allows the power to develop and be maintained internally to put those values into practice, then it can almost be worse than otherwise. I know our National Health Service, it's a very top-down system. It employs about 1.5 million people, and the vast majority of them are good people who've gone into healthcare because of wanting to help others and as well as earn a living. And yet it is huge and unwieldy in many ways, and it keeps being reorganized. It must have had 10 reorganizations, I should think, in in the last 30 or 40 years that I've observed it. And sometimes, you know, if it with a top-down system where the politicians are the ultimate ones in charge, and they're under pressure themselves, so they put pressure on senior managers, and senior managers put pressure on the consultants, and then the patients are making demands from underneath, and the staff can feel that there just isn't the strength to live by these beautiful values that might be produced by their managers and put up on the wall. And in those cases, it can produce an actual, I think, a sort of negative reaction where people feel betrayed. They're being asked to live by these higher values, but they're not given circumstances in which would facilitate that. So it is important always to be aware of the value of these values, but at the same time to be aware of the need to empower them, both individually, but also collectively. I think one factor that I'd like to mention that took me a long time to deal with internally is where there is some kind of internal dissonance, meaning a kind of conflict inside. There are, probably the best example from my own life is what happened when, this is going back some 30 years, when I began to realize, well, going back 40 years actually, to when I began to realize that the way I was living my life was causing me to feel that it was very ego-driven and this emptiness was present. And there were episodes that made me feel there's not enough love in my household. I was married with 2 sons. And when they were about 10 and 11, I remember this coming to a head because both myself and my wife were ambitious and working hard. To begin with, I'd taken care of the children. I put my own career on the back burner for a while Liz, my wife, got going. But then we were both really pushing forward with our careers. And I felt as if our boys were suffering, that there wasn't enough of this energy of care and cooperation within the home. And this led me, I think it sort of primed me for a spiritual awakening. I was working as a medical correspondent, a medical and science correspondent on one of the national newspapers in England. And I did gravitate towards doctors who had a holistic perspective, who understood the importance of the mind in keeping us well or in making us ill, because very definitely so many of our illnesses are the culmination of prolonged negative experiences. And so I was writing about this, about the mind-body effect. I was looking at love and its role in healing, as well as reporting technological and other breakthroughs and problems arising within medicine, which is a wonderful profession. It's always self-examining and moving forward and finding fresh ways of caring. So all of that primed me, I think, for a spiritual awakening. And it did happen one day when I'd gone to a press conference that was given by a Swami of the Siddha Yoga school. It was a guru in India, and this Swami was a lovely person. He'd been invited by a top Anglican churchman, Edward Carpenter, who that time he was the Dean of Westminster Abbey, which is the top Anglican church in the UK. And the Swami spoke about the soul. And this had formed no part of my background. Yes, there might have been a reference to it when I would go to church as a child, but not really with any kind of meaning. But there was a lot of emphasis on loving your neighbor, living well, turn the other cheek, be tolerant, various things, good behaviors that we should inculcate. But I don't remember any mention of the soul, but this Swami spoke of the soul, and the Christian chief, this dean, he also spoke of the soul. And there was a slight difference in the angle, but that in itself did something to awaken something deep inside me. And I had a kind of vision of light at the end of this press conference when there was a chant of Om Namah Shivaya was shared by some of those present. And that really was a wake-up call for me that led me to, in a few months later, to take up Raja Yoga with the Brahma Kumaris, who I met. They had a little center quite near my home. And so this was a wonderful discovery. I think the contrast was so great between the materialistic outlook that I had previously as a science writer, growing up in the Western culture. You know, the 60s, the swinging 60s in London was all about, you know, clothes and fashion and love and, yeah, but, you know, kind of an undisciplined way of life, overturning old institutions, disregarding wisdom traditions to some extent, feeling that they'd got lost in institutional dryness and corruption. So there was this general atmosphere in which I grew up, but that's fine to question, but what was to be put in its place? And I didn't really have anything in its place in terms of that, where that love and care and inner self-respect was going to come from. And so I fell in love with the energy that I met in these sisters who'd come from India and who were teaching about Raj Yoga and telling me that I was a soul and that love and peace and wisdom were intrinsic to every soul, but that we'd lost sight of that through karma over many centuries, perhaps, many, many lifetimes, so that it had got buried underneath these actions that became more and more limited. So the gold had alloy mixed in it, or you could say the rust on the soul was obscuring its inner beauty. And this spoke to me very powerfully. And I think partly because of that, it created a bit of chaos in our home. I think it brought huge benefit. Both of our sons learned a lot over the next few years, and they've gone on to have really very good careers where instead of being ego-driven, they've both had that element of wanting to contribute to society more than coming more from a place of wholeness and cooperation with others rather than from that ego-driven space that somehow I'd found myself burdened with. And so they've done fine, but when they were grown up, my wife, who was not interested in meditation, she said she'd rather knit than meditate, that would be her meditation. And so she wanted us to separate. And I didn't want that at all. And I went to one of the senior sisters, I was fighting it. I went to one of the senior sisters and said, Liz wants us to separate. What do you think? And she said, well, do you love Liz? I said, yes. And she said, well, then you'll want what Liz wants, won't you? You know, this was actually very good advice. It was advice that was free of all the baggage of, you know, religious and spiritual and social and moral etiquette. It was a advice to follow love and care rather than the selfish needs that were making me want to hold on to Liz. And it was good advice, and I followed it. I'd seen enough of the wisdom of these sisters. So I went back and okay, when we parted amicably, and just the years have gone by. So just 30 years later, we're still both leading lives independently, but my ex lives in Oxford, and we spent 3 days over Christmas together with now 5 grandchildren plus the boys, and it's all worked out in time because there was a true spirit of cooperation that sister brought out in me. However, I have to say that I really mourned the loss of the family life for quite a long time, and it was only after the penny really dropped that I am a soul, and that I am a child of that source, that I've come from there, and that I'm like a chip off the old block, and my true intrinsic nature, as with all of us, is of that love and peace and joy that one is the permanent reference point for. Only when that fell into place, and it took some years for that to happen, when that fell into place, the power was there to say, okay, yes, this loss was not a loss, it was actually a gain. But up until that time, when soul consciousness and God consciousness had really penetrated me, I was still mourning this loss. And that conflict inside, it was part of my journey. I don't regret it. It's taught me something very deep, but it also meant that I didn't race forward like some of the brothers and sisters do with these understandings, but that's okay. That's been part of my journey. So that's another of the things that I wanted to mention, that sometimes there are these conflicts continuing inside, and they're not actually easy to overcome until, as with cooperation in an ordinary everyday way, needs some power. And some of these deep hurts need a lot of power, a lot of real clarity about the soul and its journey before you can really overcome that hurt. So it was a positive outcome, but even a few years back, I was still struggling with this. So those of you who may be finding that these things, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, as Shakespeare put it, that they have come your way, and you haven't actually been able to pull the dagger out yet, or whatever it might be, the sling and arrow of outrageous fortune, don't worry. All of this will pass. It just takes persistence and patience with taking on board this beautiful spiritual awareness that you were talking about through Raja Yoga. Perhaps finally, just one other thing to mention in these comments, the difference between cooperation and collaboration. And Manoj Bhai mentioned that I've done this, I've written about 70 articles on COVID. I came out of retirement as a medical journalist when as I could see it, the mishandling of the crisis was occurring a couple of years back. Because I could see from previous experience that we were being manipulated by people who had a stake in vaccines, who mixed motives. The 100 billion made by Pfizer last year, the mRNA technology, people wanted to try it out, wanted to roll it out. But many different factors were at work involving money and ego and position, and also good motives, wanting to do the best to protect the public after the escape of this genetically engineered virus, because there's no question about its origin. It was a culmination of a long process of learning how to manipulate viruses. So all sorts of mixtures involved there, and different people taking very different stances on it. Some, not a question of intelligence. You've probably seen this yourself, that some of your friends might have been vigorously urging you to have the jab, to follow all the rules, and others would be really questioning the way the governments were interfering with our personal liberties. Some countries, old people dying alone, not allowed, family not allowed to see them, children missing schooling for a couple of years. fear-inducing through mask wearing on the basis of very, very shaky science, many, many mixed motives behind what went on. And so at times like that, one really has to sort of question oneself very deeply and inform oneself very deeply. I like what someone said about cooperation needing deep understanding of the self, of the situation, and your role in it. So for me, I felt called to do this work. Others wouldn't, because they wouldn't have that background. For me, it felt right. But it has also been a test, because I've not wanted to create division. I've wanted to put information in front of people, but I've tried to do it in as polite a way as I could, whereas some have got very angry, and on both sides of this debate, some have got very angry that calling people who questioned the science around the vaccine anti-vax, which not necessarily true at all. And then those who were questioning the value of it, getting angry about the regulators not listening to thousands of doctors who've protested about these things. And so a very, very divisive state of affairs. And I went to Sister Sudesh, one of the yogis present in London, just a few weeks ago, after writing many of these articles, to say, just to sort of check in with her and see, because on the one hand, it doesn't seem like I'm cooperating. I certainly wasn't cooperating with what I saw as wrong-headedness. But on the other hand, I was trying not to alarm people unnecessarily. I was trying to reduce fear. And I described what I've been doing. She said, what you've been doing is good, because you're honestly sharing information, and that is a form of cooperation. But light does not fight. And this was touched on, I think, by Manoj towards the end of his comments earlier. Light does not fight. There's a difference between actions performed from that inner space of soul consciousness, which is loving and genuinely wanting to help, and actions performed out of body consciousness, which tends to take a position and fight for it, and to get angry if you're not understood or rejected. So I've constant learning for me in the course of trying to manage these different energies. And can't say that I've succeeded 100%, but I've continued to learn, and it's been a very valuable exercise. So I think that's enough from me. I'd like to see if there's any questions or comments. So back to you, Manoj Bhai.
So thank you so much, Brother Neville. It was amazing, as you said, that light doesn't need to fight. And I think that's right. Okay, fine. So there's one question which is coming. I'll just take one question in the interest of time. It's about the COVID pandemic, which China has again sort of come up with. And I mean, the question has been posed. It's a big paragraph mentioned, but I will just like to summarize it, that they are trying to hide data and they're not very transparent, etc., etc. So how should we as Rajyogis give cooperation to such people, to such situations?
I think it's really good not to be deceived. I think many BKs were deceived on this, and unfortunately some policies were put in place which I think would be regrettable. For example, requiring people to be vaccinated in order to continue to work at centres and things like that. To me, that betrayed a lack of care and true cooperation in informing themselves properly about what was happening. It's forgivable because so much propaganda came from one side on this, and there was very extensive media censorship of what was really going on, at least in some of our cultures. I don't know precisely what happened in India, but I think with regard to the different nations, one of the things that's important is to hold on to the understanding that for the most part, even though we are living in an era where light is not widely present in ourselves as individuals or in the world, there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of selfishness and ego and ambition and greed, definitely. And that's one of the lessons of this whole episode, actually. But underneath that, there is always the original purity of the human soul. And there are elements of that get disguised or that can still be glimpsed through the darkness. For example, I think that it doesn't help to blame nations. I think that is damaging and dangerous. It doesn't help to, what it does help to see that the origins of this virus as genetically engineered, it was a collaboration between American and Chinese scientists, essentially. It's good to see that, but understand that their motives were not necessarily all bad. In fact, consciously their motives were good because the technology to do this had arisen a few years back, and the defense departments were very concerned that if they didn't prepare themselves for an eventuality like this, where a genetically engineered virus would be released as a kind of bio-warfare on the world, if they didn't prepare for that, then they would be caught short and they would be letting down their own people. So there was a kind of anticipation of it where they thought that if we see whether we can make this ourselves and then provide an antidote to it, we will be prepared in case a rogue state or a terrorist does this to us, because the technology now is actually quite readily available to do this. And that good motive was present within the manipulation and the greed and the other factors and the lies and deceit that also operated throughout this, because it was very quickly clear that certainly in our context in the UK, this came and went with minimal effect on overall death rates, whereas what has happened subsequently has been through the lockdowns and also through the jab rollout has actually been more harmful than the arrival of the COVID virus in the first place. Now, experience is different in different lands. There have been different types of vaccine have been rolled out, but whatever the detail, I think it's so valuable to hold on to the understanding that actually people, even though we are all subject to these distortions of our original beauty and kindness and cooperative tendencies, even though those distortions are there, underneath everything, at least we still really do not want to do harm. I don't believe some of those theories that this is a deliberate attempt to wipe out slices of the world population, things like all sorts of crazy ideas have come out there, and I don't believe those, because I do believe in the fundamental goodness of the human spirit, although I can also see that at this time in history, that goodness has also to some extent been lost. So that's my answer in broad terms, not to pass judgment on a nation or on individuals or even on scientists who were involved in this, because they actually had some good motives mixed in with what happened.
Fine, great. So thank you so much for the goodness in the answer. And I would now request Dr. Ashok Mehta and Sister Claudia, both of them, to please propose the vote of thanks, one after the other.
I saw Dr. Ashok Mehta on the screen earlier. I was so pleased. We haven't seen each other for some years. So nice to see you.
I think one benefit of a Zoom meeting is, though you are far away, we can hear you and we can see you, and we can, like today, you have given us a peep into your life, which is also very interesting. I have known Neville back from the day one I went to England for the first time, 91 probably. That was the year when Dadi Janki asked me to, Dadi Prakashmani asked me to travel to different parts of the world to promote the global hospital. That at that point was a very small project, but that was a need of the hour. Mm-hmm. And I was not a BK to that extent. I used to enjoy meeting them, listening to Murlis, but my understanding was very limited at that point of time. That's the time when I met Dadi. I went to England and I had the privilege of getting the love from Dadi and the important brothers in London. And that's where I met Neville Pai for the first time over the lunch. And I've always loved his personality in many ways, apart from his, I think his frankness, his loving nature and openness is something that you really need to experience. Neville Pai, today we enjoyed your talk. I think it had a lot of wisdom, a lot of depth, a lot of sharing, which really make it a real life story. I think whatever you have said, the stories were very interesting. And every Englishman, you were so thorough in your approach to share the views on cooperation that we enjoyed it. I'll never forget the dagger Dadi pulled out of your chest. That was very, very touching.
I've looked on in wonder at how this global hospital has grown from 1992, a major contribution to healthcare now, and with Dr. Mehta right at the heart of that. Many, many challenges along the way, but tremendous amount of cooperation actually required for that to happen in a very practical way. Quite remarkable to start a hospital like that high up on a mountain, and then to see it grow and attract the right staff, and then further development. So much has happened. It's been a huge pleasure and privilege to know Dr. Mehta over these years.
So I think we've really enjoyed meeting after, thanks to COVID, we didn't have a chance of physical meeting, but I'm sure that this year you will be coming to India. 23 is the right year. I mean, this is the beginning of the year. So next 12 months, whenever you come, you tell me, and I'm going to come to Mount Abu or bring you to Mumbai. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure seeing you, listening to you, and interacting with you. Thank you, brother. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Happy New Year to you and to all of you who are here with us today. It is a pleasure to have you on the first day of the year 2023 and sharing about all your wisdom that you have and all your life. It's so nice when we hear stories of the other one's life and the power of cooperation. And yes, for sure, like Dr. Mehta said, this global hospital and also all the centers everywhere, all the retreat places, they are all cooperation of all of them who are there participating. Otherwise, we will not have that so large international organization running everywhere by themselves. So yes, I quite like the global hospital. I work there as a volunteer, and I have lots of love for that place, and I really thank Dr. Mehta. But today I'd like to thanks to you a lot for being with us on the first day of the year. So bringing us the value so important for us to put into practice, which is cooperation. Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to you and to everyone.
Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, both of you. And it's indeed a big thanks to Brother Neville for taking out time on the 1st January, because people usually are not free on that day, I feel. Okay, so let me just quickly go to the announcements. As all of you know, we are stepping in the month of January. It's a beautiful month for the spiritual seekers at Brahma Kumaris, all of us here. we want to elevate our stage, go towards the perfect and complete stage of us. So we have with us our flying angel, dear and respected Jayanti Didi, who will be guiding us on this next episode. The value which we are covering is solitude. And in Hindi, we call it Ekant. It's a deep meaning to it. Didi will cover it in detail. Remember, it's next Saturday, 7th Jan. And as always, the time remains the same, 8:30 p.m. India time, and the West Coast is 7 a.m. in the morning. And followed by that, we are actually having a bonus this time of having 2 silence retreats because we weren't able to do it in the month of December. So we have the first silence retreat on solitude, the same value, and that will be immediately the next day after 12 hours of Didi's talk on Sunday, 8 Jan for India, and evening for West Coast, US and Canada. And as always, we have the workshop as we are doing today. So we have speakers all over from UK, and it started with Brother Neville this time. So we have again another speaker from GRC, Oxford. That's Sister Manda, and she'll be guiding us on her wisdom on solitude. She's also the one who's received a lot of sustenance and caring from Dadi Janki. This is our elegant January calendar. We have the other value which we'll be covering in this January auspicious Avyak month is being essenseful. So we'll be announcing that later as well. And these are our websites. And you can find all these workshops on omshanti.tk/workshops. And all the episodes by the senior Rajyogis on this playlist /English. Or you can just visit our YouTube channel, vihasa.in. Thank you. And with this, I would stop sharing. I would request Anu sister to please take the photograph because people are requesting for that. And then we'll go in the meditation mode with Brother Neville. So over to Anu sister.
Yeah. Thank you. So everyone open the video, switch on. And Neville brother will have our fortune of first photograph with you on Zoom.
Oh.
We take this photo, so we make this moment memorable. And all your wisdom sharing that is with us. So I'm giving a minute or a few seconds for everyone to open their video. Start. So there are more in the second page. Got it. Thank you.
So we'll just, is it Drishti or you want a meditation commentary, Brother Neville? What would you feel comfortable?
Just, I can say a few words, yeah.
Okay, fine.
And do you want some music in the background? Low music though, it may compatible or not, or in silence.
Yeah, some low music would be fine, thanks.
We'll try.
I'm sure most of you will have seen Sister Shivani speaking on how we are at heart vibrational beings. The matter of the body is one thing, but the soul is quite distinct. And once this is understood, we realize how important it is to ensure that as much as possible, the thoughts and feelings we choose to experience are of a positive nature, because that positive vibration not only heals and strengthens our immediate environment, the body, but those in our close connection, and even the wider world. So whenever I want to meditate consciously, I embrace a thought such as gratitude for those that I love, gratitude for having found my way from a very dark place into more and more into light. And above all, now I'm able to feel that I can know the energy of the Supreme. It's not complicated. We refer to that one as our Father, because although not human, although an incorporeal and unchanging source of pure energy, the relationship of father and child is a very beautiful one. And when I make the choice to put on one side any negative feelings or thoughts and embrace positivity, love, peace, wisdom, and joy, that opens up a channel to the Supreme, and there's a flow of energy between us, between the father and the child. The more I do that, the more I'm able to move around with the feeling of having the Father with me, which is a wonderful way of living. It's helpful to me, and it's helpful to my family, and it's helpful to the wider world.
So, thank you so much, Brother Neville, for your sharings. Thank you.
Thank you. And Happy New Year to everyone.
Yes, thanks a lot. Happy New Year to all of you.
Thank you, Brother Neville. Happy New Year to all. Yes, Happy New Year. It's a beautiful year. Thank you, brother. Very, very beautiful start for giving us this beautiful start.
It was a big privilege to be invited to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Om Shanti.